All right, boys, AI is a big deal, and it's impacting every state here in the US a little bit differently. And in today's video, we're gonna look at why AI is so important. So we're gonna look at some more job data, and we're gonna look at which states are crushing it and which states are falling behind. Pay attention, because if your state is falling behind, that could mean more opportunity for you potentially. And then we're gonna finally close it out with looking at what states can do and what's important for them to do to try to improve their stance in this field. And we're also going to look, more importantly, at what you can do as men, as fathers, as leaders, as breadwinners for our households. It's pretty important that we're on top of this trend, because falling behind in AI will mean you're going to be replaced. We're going to look at some of the data there too. It's pretty shocking. And by the way, if you want sources, I've got a bunch of sources down in the comments below, so you can stay up to date and kind of read a little bit further. So let's start with the percentage of jobs requiring AI expertise. So in 2022, and this is even a few years ago, the number of jobs requiring AI expertise increased 26% from the prior year to about 874,000 jobs. Okay, and this is interesting too. Then following year in 2023, there was a 450% surge in AI skill posting. So you're seeing a massive demand. I couldn't find up-to-date statistics. I'll keep bringing that to you as it becomes more transparent. But the bottom line is more and more jobs are requiring AI. And like CEOs, I want to say the number, I recorded this video a few weeks ago, but something around 80% of CEOs are stating that AI is mandatory and a primary thing that they're looking at just for their development, but also for their team members. That's a pretty large percentage. As of today, 2% of all jobs require AI skills. 2% of jobs are requiring it. I can't predict the future, but that's only going to increase. To me, 2% seems low. Although, guys, there's a lot of jobs out there that maybe don't necessarily require it now. But I think part of what we're going to see here is more and more AI, automation, robotics. Sam Altman anticipates that you're going to have robots in people's homes, humanoid robots in people's homes by 2027. Elon is on the same track there. And you look at big companies like Amazon. Amazon has finally hit critical mass here of robots. They now have more robots in warehouses than humans. And they've laid off 100,000 employees this year. Microsoft, and I've posted a couple of videos about this over the past couple of days. Microsoft has laid off almost 10% of their workforce right now for AI. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in this video too. So it's pretty crazy. They've and in fact, in addition to that, in addition to laying off 10% of their workforce, this becomes a global issue because now they're investing billions and billions of dollars into India, reported $3 billion into India infrastructure. And they have a plan to upskill 10 million Indian workers. I recorded a long video on this yesterday that I think is really important for us as American men and leaders to consider. Nothing against India. I've worked with a bunch of Indians before. I think they're great. They're very skilled. The cost of living there is significantly different than it is here. Someone the other day in the comments on that video had posted that, skilled labor in India is actually great. And it's not that inexpensive. He said it's $15 an hour. And I'm looking at the math and I'm like, dude, if you're a man trying to provide for his family, if you're making 15 bucks an hour and you're working 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, and you don't take any vacation time, you're making like $31,000 pre-tax income. That ain't gonna cut it. That ain't gonna cut it. You're basically living in poverty if you're making $31,000 a year. At any rate, AI creates a lot of problems, but it also creates a lot of opportunities for guys like us that are trying to stay ahead of the curve and going to really, really find those opportunities to thrive. US labor right now shows that 2.2 million Americans are now in AI intensive roles. Over 2 million of us are in AI intensive roles. I know I'm using AI all day, every day, not just professionally, but personally, trying to find different types of ways to get advantages, to save myself time. And so that's another way to get ahead. Goldman Sachs, I just found this stat today, and this is crazy. I've been citing the World Economics Forum's estimate of about 200 million jobs displaced over the next 5 years. But Goldman Sachs is even more bullish on AI. It's predicting 300 million jobs displaced, completely lost, and 41% of employers downsizing their workforce. 41%. And you got to ask yourself, so this is something that was interesting that Elon did when he started getting into Doge, is he sent out this memo to all government employees and say, hey, what did you do this week? What are you doing? What's your value? And a lot of people got angry about that. But for me, I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're not able to quickly, concisely, and clearly explain what it is that you do, you're probably going to be one of these people that's at risk at one of these 41% of companies. So, and this is actually an inflection point for me. I've started doing this for all the clients that I work with. Every month, I send them a breakdown. These are all the different things that we did. Here's the invoice for the month. Is there anything else that you would like to add to the future services? And we can talk about that. I think that's interesting. Pew Research has now estimated 19% of workers are in AI exposed jobs. And get this, one of the things I think is interesting about this, they're saying nearly 20% of people are in AI exposed jobs, but they're also stating, they also show that the vast majority of them, the largest percentage of those employees that are at risk are college graduates. College graduates, yeah, the guys that have all the money and spend all that money on fancy education. I have a college degree, by the way. It was paid for by a scholarship that I got, but that's another point. The reality is that the guys and girls that graduated from college, they are walking away typically with massive amounts of debt. And now they're in jobs that are going to be replaced by AI or exposed to AI. That's a huge problem for them. We haven't actually tackled that in how we solve that problem of all of our graduates. I know there's this idea of, well, we'll just pay off their college, we'll just forgive their college debt. And yeah, that doesn't work for me either. We won't get into that in this video, because today we're talking again about US states, who's winning and who's losing in the AI race, right? Anyway, I wanted to kind of contextualize that a little bit with some new data, some new stats I found, to really try to clarify how big of a deal this is and how important it is, okay? And one of the things, before we get into actually which states are winning and losing, one of the things that happened just this past week within our world, our ecosystem, was the big beautiful bill being passed, and passing the House, going back to the Senate, and then coming back to the House. And one of the things that was interesting was the Senate, and let me make sure I get this right. So basically where we're at here is it was tried to, a part of the bill, of this 1,000-page bill, was meant to allow the federal government to regulate AI over the next 10 years, essentially. It couldn't be state regulated, and that was removed. So there's a lot of state regulation that's available, and I think that's important to this topic, because states have the decisions to make on how they're going to either adapt or fight against the AI wave that's coming. And I've talked about this at length in previous videos, but there's certainly a privacy concern here, but I'm more in the camp of, let's not try to swim against the AI wave, let's surf the AI wave, at least on a personal responsibility level. We as individuals trying to provide for our families, we can't necessarily fight against it. We might not like everything that's happening, might not like deep fakes and stuff like that. Certainly there's some regulation that needs to happen, but regardless, we need to ride the wave, not fight against it, because that's how you drown, boys. Okay, so let's look here. We're finally getting here. We're going to talk about the states. Okay. So there's a few things that we're assessing when trying to grade criteria of which states are winning and which states are losing in the AI race. And one of those is, how many businesses are using AI? What are the AI intensive jobs per capita? Okay, so per 1,000 jobs, how many of those jobs are intensive in AI? How many AI related degrees per 10,000 young adults? How many people are getting degrees in AI? Which, by the way, I recorded an entire video on this. I'll put a link to it here. You don't need a degree to have success with AI. And we'll talk about that in this video a little bit too. Digital infrastructure, how much access to high-speed internet is there? If you don't have high-speed internet, you're just not going to be able to really win with AI. State AI focused policies and funding. How is the state funding AI? What kind of barriers is it putting in place for AI? And again, this comes down to a pretty big issue when it comes to AI is, how do I retain my privacy and my rights? And how are these AI models and tools able to function throughout the digital world? Because if there's too much privacy, it's almost impossible to train these LLMs. But if there's not enough privacy, they're just going to stomp us out, and we don't want that either. Okay, so let's talk about the top here. Okay, who are the top states that are crushing with AI? The number one is DC, followed by New Hampshire. Utah comes in at number 3. Maryland at number 4, Massachusetts number 5, and then Colorado at number 6, and then California at number 7. So I thought these were some interesting numbers. Some other notables here would be Texas coming in at 19. I know Austin, Texas is big, and New York at 23, and then my home state of Florida coming in at 35, which is rather sad. Come on, Florida, let's go, guys. Like we don't need to lose here. And by the way, just because a state is lagging behind on this doesn't mean it's a loser. It means there's opportunity because AI is not going anywhere. We already looked at the stats. Goldman Sachs, 300 million jobs displaced. Just because your state is lagging behind doesn't mean you can't win. And by the way, in the description below, I'll write the whole comprehensive list of all 50 states so you can see where your state is stacked up. So one of the things I thought was interesting is businesses that are using AI. Because DC is definitely standing out at 22%, Utah coming in at 12.5%, Colorado at 12%, Minnesota at 11.5%, and then Montana at 11% as far as businesses that are using AI. So they're really, all the businesses are using it at a high level. I just think that's an interesting stat. I think that's interesting. So obviously we see that these are the top business. The top performers are DC at 22.2% of businesses using AI. It's the highest per capita of AI jobs. So they're really, if you're in AI, if you're in software development, software engineering, DC is a good place to go, although you're gonna have more competition there. So we've got to think about that. We've got to think about where's the competition, where's the demand. Utah, 12.5% of businesses are using AI, and then 82% of households have ultra fast internet. By the way, I think some of these stats might be skewed a little bit because, in some of these larger states like Texas, like Florida, there's gonna be areas that have very high-speed internet. I live here in the Tampa Bay area. There's high-speed internet everywhere. But there's other areas like in Ocala and out in the sticks where you're not gonna have high-speed internet. This might be a challenge for some of the mountainous states too. West Virginia, Colorado's obviously doing well, but this is something to consider. And also a reason why what Elon's doing with Starlink is actually such a big deal. Really, really big deal. Who are the lagging states? Alaska, West Virginia, Florida, my home here. Alaska, only 12 AI graduates per 10,000 youth. So a lot of the youth are not being trained in these new AI models. I think that's a problem. Although Alaska is different. It's kind of like the final frontier out there, right? I don't necessarily think a lot of Alaskans are worried about surviving the snow and polar bears, less so than the Terminator. Florida has a pretty good amount of AI business use at 11.3%, but very weak computer science education pipeline. Only 2.3% of students are graduating and learning computer science. That's a problem. That's obviously a problem. 57% of households have fast internet, which is pretty low. You would think at this day and age, just about everybody would have access to fast internet, but that, my friends, is not the case. And by the way, I don't want to go off on an education tangent. That's probably its own separate video, but I'm a father. I got a 9-year-old daughter. I've got a 6-year-old son, and I was talking. Just the education is not where it needs to be, guys. They are not learning skills that they need to learn. I was talking to my niece the other day, and I had mentioned Bitcoin, and she was like, "Oh, what is that? That's like stocks." So I kind of explained what Bitcoin is and how it's more of a commodity, blah, blah, blah. And then I started asking her about a 401k. I'm like, your employer has a 401k match? She says, yes. I said, well, are you contributing to that? She said, no. I'm like, let's pop open ChatGPT and we're gonna run a quick experiment here. And I asked if she was to start maxing out her 401k now at $2,000 a year with her employer match at $2,000 a year, how much would she have by retirement age at 59 and a half? $1 million. And I said, what if she waits 10 years to start investing? He said, $400,000. And I saw my niece's jaw drop to the floor. She had no idea. She is a high school graduate. She's smart. She never learned the power of compounding interest. Guys, it's the eighth wonder of the world, and they're not learning this in high school? What the hell is happening? 1 in 3 kids are actually able to read at their grade level. What the hell is happening? This is, I mean, negligence at best. It's negligence at best is what it is. It's just obscene. It's obscene. We got to teach our kids. By the way, if your idea is I'm going to send my kids to school for 8 hours a day and they're gonna learn, I just think that is poppycock, to quote my British friends. You got to get involved, guys. You got to get involved. And using AI, I think, is a big opportunity there too. By the way, so a couple of interesting case studies. Tennessee, which is around 36-ish in this chart, is signing a lot of AI regulations. Specifically around deepfakes and child protection, which, by the way, I'm for that. I think that's good. They are underperforming on AI degrees and infrastructure, so that's somewhere to think about. Arizona, 10.6% AI adoption among businesses, 103 AI-related degrees per 10,000. So what you're kind of seeing here is the states that are falling behind is quite commonly because of infrastructure, access to high-speed internet, and lack of education. They're just not training their kids well enough. So pretty shocking. Now, all that said, AI university degrees are growing massively. They're up about 30% over the last 5 years, which I think is interesting. So, I mean, you could probably guess this already. What can these states do to catch up? Invest in their STEM education. Your kid should be in robotics class. I put my kid in coding and robotics. She loves that. We do Legos. Like, your kid should be doing something in STEM. They need to expand broadband, whether that's what Elon is doing with his high-speed internet, or we need to have fast internet. Everybody should have fast internet, right? I'm not gonna say it's a basic human right, but in the world we live in, it's pretty important. They can certainly support AI-centric businesses with tax incentives. That's something that Florida, I think, has done a really good job of, is attracting businesses that are coming from states like New York and specifically California, where state regulation can be pretty burdensome. They can launch more AI education pathways, implement smarter regulations like Tennessee did with deepfakes. And so I think that's all a positive thing. So we talked about a lot of like macro stuff, but let's talk about you. What can you do? What am I doing? These are the things. A, you're using AI in your everyday life all the time. You're learning ChatGPT, you're playing with Midjourney, you're using Grok, you're just in it. You're using AI, you're communicating with it, you're testing out multimodal functionality, you're speaking with it. You're not falling in love with it, by the way, guys. Do not fall in love with your AI chatbot, but you're using it regularly to communicate. And I saw an interesting post the other day, which I think I lined up with pretty well, is if you're kind of thinking through a topic, give your AI chatbot 3 prompts and then start thinking critically for yourself. Because I think as far as us as older leaders, men, one of the advantages that we have is we've, at least as millennials and Gen Xers, is we grew up in an analog world and a digital world. So we have a bit more critical thinking experience. That's something that we can lean on is, hey, I know how to connect with humans. I know how to look a human in the eye, shake their hand, but I also know how to use the tools. So once you've got some clarity over the AI tools, you definitely want to be using AI-assisted workflows. You think about what you're doing at work. Think, how could I implement AI into this standard operating procedure? How could I implement AI into this workflow to make it faster, to make it better, to create a better response, whether that's emails, website copy, whether that's generating lists, whatever it is, you should be using AI and implementing your workflows. And then once you've started doing that, try to automate the workflows using programs like Zapier. I'm a huge fan of Zapier, and there's a lot of tools HubSpot, a lot of tools will allow you to automate with AI. You should be doing that after you've kind of gotten your feet under you. And then lastly, this is where I'm at right now, is starting to use AI, starting to build AI software solutions. I find problems, I try to build out minimum viable solutions using programs like Replit. I use Replit specifically, but there's other programs like Lovable, and I'm sure there'll be more. At any rate, what do you think, guys? Is your state keeping up? Is it falling behind? Are you keeping up? Are you falling behind, more importantly? Because it's coming for us, guys. It's coming for us. And if we're gonna provide for our families, it's really important that we're getting ahead now before it's too late, boys. Because I don't know about you, I don't want to go back into the AC field. Before I got into marketing and creation and CMO type of work, that's what I was doing, guys. I was doing that. Then I was doing AC work. It was very hard. I kept getting shocked. I kept getting zapped. I was doing some dangerous stuff on really tall ladders. I don't want to go back to that. I would much rather live in an AI world where I'm able to provide for my family. I'm able to solve interesting problems. I'm able to generate wealth. And I think that's where most guys are. We just want to provide for our families. We want to have the respect of our community. And guys, I hope that these videos are going to inspire you, are going to impact you in a way and help you to not only be up to date on what's happening in the marketplace, but also what's coming next. And listen, by the way, if you really enjoyed the video, thanks for watching. The channel is exploding right now. And if you want more information about what's happening in the job market, take a look at yesterday's video. We'll put a link right here. Take a look at that video because Microsoft just laid off 10% of its workforce. We go into incredible depth. Check out this next video and I'll see you there. All right, peace.